For more than 20 years, Vladimir Putin has ruled Russia like a chess master, with every move calculated and every opponent silent. His power felt absolute and his image seemed untouchable. He has created an empire that moves only at his command. But sometimes empires fall. Not in an instant, but in small, tiny cracks impossible to hide. And those cracks have begun to appear in the corridors of the Kremlin. The war, intended to secure Putin's place in history, has instead exposed the limits of his power, a gamble that may mark the beginning of his end. This is not just the story of one man's downfall. It's the story of how power consumes its creator and how history's most calculated ruler may finally lose control of the very system he forged. Throughout history, few things have shown to be more perilous than a leader unwilling to accept defeat. When faced with failure, most people retreat, regroup, and learn. But men who rule nations through power and force don't walk away. Instead, they double down. They gamble with armies instead of cards and with lives instead of money. And every time they lose, they raise their stakes again. For them, defeat is not just about politics. It's a matter of existence. It's a matter of power. This is the trap Vladimir Putin now finds himself in. The same psychology that helped him rise to power. The unyielding belief in control, strength, and never showing weakness has now become his greatest liability. His mindset is like a gambler who has already lost but is afraid to accept his defeat. And that's why he keeps raising the stakes again and again. Because he is a man who has built his entire image on control. And now, for him, losing control means losing everything. But he is not the only one gambling with this mindset. History has seen other rulers like him leading with the same mindset. Rulers who mistook stubbornness for strength, who sent their nations towards disaster just to delay the moment of reckoning. For example, Adolf Hitler. His defeat was certain at one point, but he refused to accept. He refused to negotiate. He refused to surrender, and dragged what remained of Germany down with him. His empire did not fall apart overnight. It bled out slowly as denial replaced logic. He continued to fight even after Berlin was surrounded. What was the result? The war ended, but by Hitler taking his own life, because he could not bear the consequences of what he had done. Decades later, Saddam Hussein followed a similar script. Faced with overwhelming force during the Iraq War, he too doubled down, convinced that defiance alone could rewrite fate. But he was wrong. His armies collapsed, his cities fell, but he refused to accept the defeat. He believed that his image as an invincible leader would survive. It did not. These gamblers believed that the next move would turn everything around, so they kept on doubling down. But history witnessed that no second chance was given to these men. This is exactly the situation of Putin now. He thought that war with Ukraine would be his crowning achievement that would seal his legacy and restore Russia's might. But the war has completely exposed his delusion. It is not what Putin expected. But he is not admitting the fact. Instead, like Hitler in his bunker and Saddam in his final broadcast, he too continues to gamble, hoping the next move, the next missile will change the tide. There are several undeniable facts about Russia's war in Ukraine that cannot be overlooked. First, Russia is simply bleeding. Its military has suffered staggering losses that the Kremlin would never admit. The original goals, the fall of Kyiv, regime change, and a divided Ukraine, have all slipped out of reach. Secondly, despite this, Putin has shown no signs of slowing down. He has neither shown any interest in peace, nor any willingness to stop what he has started. But what is the result of this stubbornness, this endless war? 1 million Russian casualties, and for what? Just a few pieces of land. No doubt, in the first few months of war, Russia gained control over several Ukrainian areas, But now, the number has decreased with the passage of time. Western support has also played a key role in support of Ukraine. They have upgraded their defenses, and with advanced drones and missiles, they can strike Russia at any time. Thus, the balance of power is shifting with each passing day. Now, what would be the ideal situation according to you? You may think that Russia should seek an escape now. It should grab any opportunity if presented to preserve its dignity. But that is not the case. Because Russia was given a chance of peace and a chance of ending the war. But Russia refused. When Donald Trump presented Russia with peace terms, including recognition of Russian control of Crimea and exclusion of Ukraine from joining NATO, Putin turned them down flat. Putin talked about these peace terms with his words, but not with his actions, because his strikes on Ukrainian cities never slowed down. He never stopped targeting Ukrainian civilians, buildings, hospitals, and playgrounds. If he really wants a ceasefire, why would he still be bombing cities? What type of peace is this? Maybe Putin does not want the ceasefire. He does want to talk about negotiations. He just wants this war to never end. Because an endless war feeds the propaganda machine. It would keep the Russian people looking outward, not inward. As long as the war continues, Putin would be an essential figure, the guardian, the firm authority against an imagined enemy. But every empire built on lies and fear reaches a breaking point. And for Putin, that point is getting closer with every drone strike that slips through his defenses, every Western missile that shatters his front lines, and every destroyed tank that reminds the world that his army is no longer invincible. Vladimir Putin is no longer driven by strategy. He is driven by survival. His calculus is no longer about what's best for Russia. It's about what keeps him in power one more day. He is a man who refuses to accept defeat because accepting defeat would mean facing the collapse of everything he has built. For Putin, ending the war would not bring peace. It would bring consequences. That's why he wants to keep it going for his personal benefits. For Putin, as long as the war continues, he is vital. He will remain in power and control. As long as he can convince the Russian people that they are fighting for survival, he can delay the reckoning that awaits him when the guns fall silent. And it's not just about what's in Putin's head. It's about what's happening in his country. The Russian economy currently depends on the fumes of war. Whole sectors rely on contracts for weapons production, logistics, and reconstruction, directly associated with the invasion. Millions of Russians currently make a living through the war, including soldiers, contractors, and factory workers, producing missiles and tanks. Putin raised military salaries, expanded arms production, and created an illusion that war is profitable. That worked for a while, but it's a fragile illusion. Because if the war ends, so does that prosperity. Factories would shut down. Military salaries would vanish. Millions would face unemployment. Maybe that's why Putin wants to avoid the trouble by continuing the war. Before the invasion, Putin built a financial war chest worth billions of dollars to support Russia through short-term shocks or to restore the economy after a quick, conclusive win in Ukraine. However, that victory never came, and the war chest is already gone. And where was it used? Instead of rebuilding, Russia has been forced to use it just to keep fighting. If the war ended today, there would be nothing left to give the Russian people for their sacrifice. No reward, no relief, and no reason to believe that it was all worth it. And this is the nightmare scenario for Putin. Because if people lose faith in the war, they start looking for someone to blame, and Putin knows this very well. So, He keeps gambling, keeps doubling down, thinking that the next move would change everything. It's the same pattern that we have seen before, like in the case of Hitler and Saddam. The gambler who has lost everything but keeps playing, thinking that one final game will save him. But these gamblers forgot one thing, that each stake costs more than the last. This is what Putin is trapped in. A cycle of escalation he can no longer control. The war in Ukraine has exposed another, far more dangerous front for Vladimir Putin, not across enemy lines, but within his own ranks. Because the true threat to his empire may not come from NATO or Kiev, but from the soldiers who fight in his name. Their stories have begun to leak. Young men who had been assured desk jobs or border patrol roles suddenly find themselves plunged into the chaos of frontline battle, armed with little more than confusion and fear. These are not rumors spread by the media. These are testimonies from the soldiers themselves, revealing a system rotting from within. There are also endless stories of abuse of officers extorting their soldiers, stealing from them, with the punishment being that if they don't do what the officer wants, they just go to the front line, where they are ordered to join a hopeless assault mission and are ultimately eliminated. Now, Putin knows that if these soldiers come home in defeat, knowing they did not get anything after all they went through, the consequences would be unbearable, especially for Putin himself. It's a terrifying thought for Putin. Putin knows that the more soldiers he puts into the battlefield, the more will have the ability to move against him, work against him, and eventually overthrow him. So he keeps gambling, thinking that either these soldiers will not come home or they will come home victorious. And that's why he is prolonging the war until things turn favorable for him. But it is not an ideal position where he is standing now. It is a desperate position because every move he makes only tightens the trap he built for himself. Given all this, it seems that war in Ukraine won't end soon. Not until Russia faces defeat, and Vladimir Putin is no longer in power. Because for him, this war is not about territory anymore. It's about survival. If you found this analysis thought-provoking, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that uncover the truth behind power and downfall.